The warm hues of the setting sun bathed Ethan's face as it cast a golden glow over Carter's sophisticated office, turning the Manhattan skyline into a canvas of amber. The long shadows stretched across the room, with the tall windows reflecting his figure as he adjusted his tie, the motion of repetitive action almost mechanical. On his polished mahogany desk lay the divorce papers, their mere presence weighing heavily as if they carried the burden of a secret Ethan had been hiding for a year and a half. He stared at them, his chest tightening. In just a few hours, his decade-long marriage to Mia Robinson, marked by shared hopes, laughter, and challenges, would officially end. It was a conclusion he believed was right, or at least what he thought she deserved, yet the heaviness in his chest told him otherwise. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. When he turned, there she was, Mia. She stood in the doorway wearing a simple yet striking blue dress, her expression serene. However, her dark eyes betrayed the storm that raged within her. Ethan's breath hitched. Even with everything falling apart between them, she still had an effortless allure. "You're early," Ethan remarked, his voice softer than he had intended. "You're late," Mia answered, stepping into the office with the quiet confidence that had first drawn him to her years ago. "But then again, you've always been late when it matters." Ethan glanced at his watch, 7:22 p.m. She was right, as usual. Before he could offer an excuse, Mia crossed the room, her heels clicking softly against the hardwood floor. Her fingers brushed the edge of the divorce papers, but she didn't look at them. Instead, she met his gaze, her voice steady, though there was a trace of vulnerability. "Before we sign anything," she began, "I have one final request. I want us to spend one last night together." Ethan stared at her, confusion and skepticism clouding his thoughts. "One last night," he echoed, his voice betraying his uncertainty. Mia nodded slowly, stepping closer to him. Her eyes were unwavering yet tender. "Yes. No lawyers, no papers, no resentments. Just you and me, remembering what we once had and maybe facing the truth." Her words hit Ethan like a crashing wave. For a moment, it felt as though the ground beneath him had shifted. "And if I say no?" he asked, his voice a strained attempt at composure. "Then tomorrow, it'll just be two strangers signing divorce papers," Mia replied, her tone gentle but firm. "But we deserve more than that, Ethan. We were a team once. Don't you remember?" The words squeezed his heart, and the weight of them nearly brought him to his knees. Taking a deep breath, he steadied himself. "Fine. But if we're doing this, you have to agree to one thing: honesty. No secrets, no hiding. You have to know everything." Mia blinked in surprise, taken aback by his sudden consent. Then a slow smile spread across her face, a bittersweet smile that carried years of unspoken longing. "Everything?" she repeated, extending her hand toward him. Ethan took her hand, feeling the warmth of her palm. It was a sensation he thought he had lost forever. "All right," he said, his voice steadier now. "So, where do we start?" Mia's grip tightened slightly as she looked at him, her eyes glimmering with something that hovered between hope and nostalgia. "First, we leave this office," she said, glancing pointedly at the divorce papers on his desk. "Then, we remember how to be us again, even if it's just for one night." Ethan followed her out of the office, leaving the unsigned papers behind. He knew that tonight would change everything. The small restaurant where Mia and Ethan had spent some of their earliest dates felt achingly familiar. The soft flicker of candlelight danced on the table, evoking memories of endless laughter and intimate conversations. But tonight, the air between them was thick with unspoken tension. Mia offered a faint smile as the server placed their favorite dessert in front of her, a rich chocolate cake she had always loved. "Do you remember this place?" she asked, her voice soft but laced with emotion. "Of course, I do," Ethan replied, trying to keep his tone even, though inside, he felt as if the weight of the secret he was about to confess would crush him. Mia carefully set her fork down, her hands trembling slightly as she locked eyes with him. There was a quiet resolve in her gaze, as though she was peeling away the layers of his carefully constructed defenses. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "what's going on? Why did you push me away?" Mia's voice sliced through Ethan like a knife. His breath caught as he leaned back in his chair, taking a shaky breath. "You want the truth?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Yes," Mia responded firmly, her eyes locked on his. Ethan lowered his head, unable to meet her gaze. "I was diagnosed with cancer, Mia," he confessed, the words spilling out as though the dam had broken. The world around them seemed to go silent. "Cancer," she echoed, her voice faltering in disbelief. "When?" 18 months ago, Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's brain cancer. Stage 3. I didn't want you to go through the pain of losing someone else after everything you've already endured with your family. I couldn't put you through that again." Mia stood frozen for a moment, absorbing his words. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, sharper, stronger. "You thought you were protecting me by hiding this?" she asked, her words laced with both anger and hurt. "You thought I'd leave you when you needed me the most?" "I didn't want to burden you," Ethan said quietly, his heart heavy. "I thought if you hated me, it would be easier for you to move on." Tears spilled down Mia's cheeks, but her eyes were fire with anger and pain. "You didn't give me a choice, Ethan," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "Love isn't about shielding each other from pain. It's about facing it together, even when it's unbearable." She stood abruptly, the chair scraping softly against the floor. "I need some air," she said, and walked away from the table, leaving Ethan feeling like his heart was breaking into pieces. Ethan found Mia in a small park near the restaurant, a place they had often visited in the early days of their relationship. She was standing by the stone railing, the soft glow of the streetlights casting her silhouette against the night. Ethan hesitated before approaching her, his coat draped over his arm. "You'll catch a cold," he said gently, slipping the coat over her shoulders. Mia didn't turn at first, her voice steady though tinged with bitterness. "It's ironic, isn't it? You worry about me catching a cold, but you hid an illness that could have taken you away from me forever." Ethan swallowed hard, trying to steady his breathing. "I know," he admitted. "I was wrong, Mia, but I didn't know what else to do. I just didn't want you to go through more pain." This time, Mia turned to face him, tears glistening on her cheeks. "Do you think I'm so fragile that I couldn't face this?" she asked, stepping closer, her voice firm and almost fierce. "You don't get it, Ethan. I've lost my parents. I've lost my brother. But the one thing I can't bear is you making all the decisions without giving me a choice." "I was scared," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "Not of dying, but of making you watch it happen. Of hurting you." Mia looked into his eyes, a mixture of sorrow and determination reflected in her own. "Love isn't about protecting each other by hiding the truth, Ethan," she said softly. "It's about standing together in the storm and refusing to let go. If you thought I wasn't strong enough, then you were wrong." The walls Ethan had built around himself seemed to crumble in that moment. He took a deep breath, a newfound sense of gratitude filling his chest as he looked at her. "I don't know if you can ever forgive me," he said softly. "I don't need to forgive you," Mia replied. "I need us to fight this together. No more secrets, Ethan. You don't have to do this alone." 3 days later, Ethan and Mia walked into his doctor's office at the medical center. Mia sat beside Ethan, a notebook in her hands filled with questions she had carefully researched about his condition. Ethan glanced at her, a quiet sense of gratitude swelling in his chest. "Are you okay?" Mia whispered, her eyes soft but watchful. Ethan nodded, though his palms were damp with sweat. "I'm better with you here," he admitted, feeling for the first time that he wasn't alone in this fight. Dr. Chin entered the room, carrying a folder and wearing a warm smile. "Ethan, Mia, it's great to see both of you today," she said. "Let's go over your recent progress." As the doctor explained the results, Mia quickly jotted down notes, asking questions Ethan hadn't even thought to ask. He sat silently, watching her, in awe of her determination and strength. "Doctor," Mia said, her tone confident, "beyond treatment, are there ways to improve his quality of life during this phase?" Her question made the doctor smile. In the weeks before, Ethan had felt lost and directionless, but now he felt a glimmer of hope. When they left the office, hand in hand, Ethan turned to Mia and said, "I never thought I deserved you." Mia looked at him, her smile gentle. "You don't have to deserve me," she said. "We just have to try. For each other." In the days that followed, Mia stood by Ethan's side through every step of his treatment. She was more than just a wife. She became his closest ally, his caregiver, and an unwavering pillar of support. Each morning, Mia woke up earlier than usual to prepare a light, nourishing breakfast for Ethan, meals carefully crafted to support his treatment. Whenever the nausea and exhaustion from his chemotherapy sessions hit, she was always there, holding his hand and softly speaking words of encouragement. Her voice, the only thing that could calm his restless mind. "You don't have to pretend you're okay with me," Mia would say gently whenever Ethan tried to force a smile. "Lean on me, Ethan. If you're weak, I'll carry the strength for both of us." As time passed, Ethan's strength diminished. The fatigue that was once manageable now left him exhausted and confined to the couch for hours. His breath became shallow, his hands trembled, yet in the quiet moments, surrounded by Mia's constant care, he found himself drifting back to memories of happier days. The laughter they shared by the lake, the warmth of her hand in his. One evening, as Mia draped a blanket over his lap, he reached out, his voice faint but firm. "Mia," he said, meeting her gaze, "there's one place I'd like to go one last time." In the evenings, they would sit together on the couch, the soft glow of the lamp casting a warm light around them. Mia would read aloud to Ethan, sometimes novels, other times articles she'd found on mental resilience during treatment. One night, Ethan said to her, "I never thought I could feel peace in days like these. But you make me believe we're still living, not just surviving." Mia smiled, squeezing his hand gently. "That's because we still have hope. Even the smallest spark of hope can light up the darkest days." Although the journey ahead was daunting, Mia never allowed Ethan to feel alone. She handled everything, appointments, treatments, daily routines, while also ensuring that he felt her love and belief in him at every step. Her care reminded him that they were fighting together, that she would never let go, no matter what came next. 3 months later, Ethan and Mia stood on the rooftop of their apartment, the lights of the city sparkling in the winter night. The cold air didn't seem to affect them as Ethan held a small velvet box, anticipation shining in his eyes. "I think it's time we start over," Ethan said, his voice warm but slightly shaky. Mia looked at him, surprise flashing across her face before a soft smile curved her lips. "Start over?" she asked. Ethan opened the box to reveal 2 simple platinum bands, cleaned and resized, wedding rings. "I thought it was time to put these back on," he said. "Not as a continuation of our old marriage, but as a symbol of the new one we're building." Mia gazed at the rings, tears glistening in her eyes. "Are you sure? We're still figuring things out." "I'm more than sure," Ethan replied. 3 months ago you asked me for one last night, but you gave me more than that. You gave me a reason to fight, a future to hope for, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of it." Mia smiled, holding out her left hand. "I agree, Ethan," she said. "Today, tomorrow, and always." As Ethan slid the ring onto her finger, they both felt as though they were starting a new chapter, one filled with love, hope, and resilience. As time passed, Ethan grew weaker. Each step became harder, each breath more laborious. Yet he carried one final wish in his heart, to spend a day at the lake where they had made so many beautiful memories. One crisp autumn morning, Ethan watched Mia making tea in the kitchen. His voice was soft but resolute. "Can you take me to the lake just one more time?" Mia looked up, concern flashing in her eyes, but she understood his wish. "Of course, Ethan," she said, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. They arrived at the lake in the late afternoon. The water shimmered under the golden sunlight, and red and orange leaves floated gently on the surface. The scene was serene, yet there was a feeling of finality in the air. Ethan sat on an old wooden bench, his hands trembling as he tried to steady his breathing. Mia sat beside him, gripping his hand tightly as if letting go would mean losing him forever. "Mia," Ethan began, his voice frail but filled with gratitude, "thank you for never giving up on me. Even when I tried to push you away, you stayed. You gave me more than I ever deserved. Mia smiled through the tears silently falling down her cheeks. I promise you, Ethan, love isn't just about being together on the good days. It's about standing by each other through the worst. The lake stretched before them, its calm surface reflecting the golden hues of the setting sun. Ethan's breath slowed, his shoulders slumped as he leaned back on the bench. Mia watched him quietly, her heart aching as she noticed the tremor in his hand, the way his once strong posture had softened into frailty. Ethan, she whispered, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to spill. I'm here. You don't have to say anything more.